Just when the world thought it had understood the full scale of Donald Trump's territorial obsession with his Greenland fetish, he opened another front. This time, it's with Britain. As Denmark and European capitals remained locked in tense negotiation over Trump's demand to acquire Greenland, the American president pivoted sharply westwards and unleashed a blistering attack on Prime Minister Keir Starmer's UK government. Well, Trump called Britain's decision to hand over the Chagos Islands to Mauritius great stupidity and an act of total weakness. Well, he declared the move inexplicable and claimed the UK gave away a strategically vital asset for no reason. For Trump, it seems Greenland and Chagos aren't separate issues. They are connected chapters in the same stories. Allies cannot be trusted to protect American interests, which is why he argues with escalating urgency, America must take matters in its own hands, starting with Greenland. We know the Chagos Islands aren't a household name, but they sit at the center of American military power in the Indian Ocean. Whether this deal goes on or if Trump succeeds in pressuring Britain to reverse the deal, the implications will ripple across the entire Indo-Pacific, signaling to every ally and enemy that no strategic decision is safe from Trump's demands. So sit back and relax as we tell you everything you need to know about the Chagos Island, from UK's deal with Mauritius to why this piece of archipelago has become another flashpoint between US and Europe. To understand Trump's seething rage, one must understand what Chagos Island actually represents. Well, Chagos Island is a group of 7 atolls comprising more than 60 islands in the Indian Ocean. And among these 60 islands sits Diego Garcia. And this is where things get interesting. Well, Diego Garcia is the largest island of the Chagos archipelago and houses the only major and permanent US military base in the Indian Ocean, and also serves as what military strategists call an unsinkable aircraft carrier of American projection. The base contains a 3,700 meters runway capable of hosting B-2 stealth bombers, nuclear submarines, aircraft carriers, and special operation forces. In fact, during the 1991 Gulf War, bombers launched from Diego Garcia struck Iran with absolute impunity. Also, after 9/11, aircraft departed directly from this island to strike Afghanistan and Iraq, flying over 2,500 miles to their targets. And more recently, the US stationed B-2 bombers there to telegraph warnings to Iran amid Middle Eastern tensions and to launch strikes against Houthis in Yemen. Well, the island's strategic value lies not in its military infrastructure, but in its geography. Positioned in the central Indian Ocean, Diego Garcia sits at the nexus of Africa, Asia, and Middle East, equidistant from the conflict zone across these 3 continents. And without it, American power projection in the Indo-Pacific evaporates overnight. Now let's understand the origins of Trump's fury, which traces back to May 2025, when Britain and Mauritius finalized a historic sovereignty agreement. Under the deal, the United Kingdom agreed to hand over sovereignty of the entire Chagos archipelago, including Diego Garcia's, to Mauritius after achieving independence. However, London extracted one crucial concession. Control of the military base would remain under British authority for a granted 99 years lease, with provisions for a renewal over an additional 40 years. Now, to sweeten the arrangement, Mauritius negotiated £101 million annually for the privilege of hosting one of the world's most strategically important military installation on its territory. Well, this was supposed to resolve decades of colonial guilt and international legal pressure. In fact, the International Court of Justice had ruled in 2019 that Britain's administration of the Chagos Island was illegal. And on the other hand, Mauritius had been demanding sovereignty for many years, and London saw the deal as a pragmatic compromise, restoring sovereignty to an independent nation while keeping American military interests secure. Now, interestingly, the White House Under Secretary of State Marco Rubio initially endorsed the arrangement in February 2025, calling it essential for regional and global security. But as the Trump we know, he has now upended that entire calculus not out of legal argument but out of raw geopolitical paranoia. Now here is where Trump's argument gains some traction from the US perspective. Mauritius, despite its legal claims to the island, maintains increasingly close ties with China. In fact, Beijing is its largest trading partner. Now critics fear that through Mauritius' control over the archipelago, China could eventually pressure the island nation to grant Beijing access to ports, airfields or intelligence gathering facilities near Diego Garcia. In fact, Beijing has demonstrated this playbook across the Indian Ocean. China controls strategic ports in Sri Lanka, has military facilities in Pakistan, Yemen and Myanmar, and not to forget, China also runs undersea survey operations under the disguise of commercial activity, likely mapping the Indian Ocean for military advantage. Now with Mauritius as a Trojan horse, China could theoretically deploy naval vessels, intelligence aircraft or electronic surveillance systems within striking distance of the American military base. Well, Trump's logic, however twisted, resonates. The Chagos deal creates vulnerability for the United States, and if Mauritius ever defaults on its debts or succumbs to Chinese pressure, the 99-year lease could theoretically be challenged or undermined, and ultimately, Washington would have no direct leverage. Well, on the surface, Trump's rhetorical link between Greenland and Chagos appear absurd. Why would territorial control of an Arctic island relate to a military base in the Indian Ocean? Well, here is the answer. Both territories serve the same strategic imperative, granting American military dominance across critical regions where rival powers are ascending very quickly. Greenland sits at the gateway to the Arctic and the Atlantic. Diego Garcia anchors the Indo-Pacific. Well, together, they represent a chess move which Trump is seeking to consolidate, where American control over two theaters where China and Russia are advancing in. The message here is absolutely clear. There is no special relationship, only American interest, enforced through tariff threats, public humiliation, and the implicit threat of unilateral action.